so different.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, my We Are Not So Different family. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your mornings with me. I totally appreciate you guys. Um, so you know the drill. Get your favorite spot on the couch and find your favorite drink, whether it's Kool-Aid or Cavassier. Relax and just join in. Yes, ma'am. That's how we get down, Miss Laura, because I feel like I need y'all to be relaxed. I need y'all to get ready to tune in and join the conversation if need be. So this morning's guest, we have Miss Laura Hernandez. Good morning, Miss Laura. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this for so long, so I'm excited to chat with you this morning.
Ah, I love it when people are excited because I feel like then they can match my energy because sometimes I'm a little extra, but that's okay. That's okay. I have accepted that about myself.
That's what I love about you.
Oh,
Precisely what I love about you. Makes me
awesome.
happy.
So allow me to share just a snippet about Miss Laura. Her and her husband Tony are raising 10 amazing children in the Dallas area. In the past 4.5 years, they've added 6 new children to the family, 3 biologically and 3 through adoption. Going from 4 to 10 kids was hard work. On top of having a large family, they're not the typical family. They have 3 kiddos in public school, homeschooling 5 kids, and 3 with special needs. And she said they were like overwhelmed with all these different appointments and stuff. So she came up with the idea of mama systems, where she can take everything that she learned to get herself and her family together and recreate that so they can. I believe on your website it says that you can offer the peace that you found. And I was like, that was very comforting, like a hot cup of tea on a warm winter day. Or like a blanket fresh out the dryer, you know what I'm saying? I was
Yeah.
like, that was very comforting. So yes, Mama Systems, Miss Laura Hernandez. And start clapping and all that good stuff. So I start off before we jump into the meat and potatoes. I start off my interviews the same way with each guest. First question: if you had the undivided attention of an audience of your choosing, who would said audience be, and what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think hands down it would be special needs mamas. I think so often we, as women and as caregivers, think that we can do it all. And
Mm,
what I've learned very quickly about my 3 special buddies, they're probably going to be living with us for a long time, like maybe forever. And so just realizing that I can't do it all and that I need help and to actively continually seek out that help has been huge. And that's not a natural thing. Like we want to think that we can do it all and be confident.
right.
And so I love encouraging mamas that haven't, that know that their service is out there for their kids, but haven't like taken that step or haven't, like, it's just it's a lot of paperwork. It's kind of overwhelming. And so I get it, but they haven't taken that step to just fill out the paperwork and get the help. And that is like the biggest thing. So you get over that, then you have all these services in play and you have help and you can be calmer and your home can be more peaceful.
Oh
And so
yeah.
I want that for special needs mamas because I feel like our buddies bring in so much chaos in and of themselves and we can't control them, sadly, just like we can't control any of our children. But
Right. You can't control
um,
anyone.
no, but we can have things, the rest of the things that we can control can be in order. So that way it doesn't feel so chaotic.
All right. I love that. It's like you're already like basically, what's inside will come out, and you're already like showing like what's in your heart, and that's what drew me to you in the first place. Um, but I digress. So special needs mamas, get some help. Awesome. Take advantage of the resources that you have.
Yes.
Um, Question number 2: if you had the opportunity to speak to younger version of yourself, let's say 5 or 6 year old Laura, what do you think little Laura needs to hear?
This question made me tear up whenever I was thinking about it. Um, I think I was molested as a child and like age 3 or 4. And I didn't know, I don't think my parents knew either how to handle that or what. So I think that a lot of just, they try to bring it up. And then as a 3, 4-year-old, I didn't know what to say about it. And so they were like, okay, well, I guess it's fine. And they just didn't know a lot about sexual abuse. And so that was just kind of left to the side. But looking back now, looking back, I can see like how that affected me throughout the years. And so a lot in counseling, I've gone back to that time and that pivotal moment in my life. And I think that I would go back and say that you are worth being upset over, like that someone did that to you. You are worth fighting over. And I'm sure my parents were upset. And I don't know. I don't remember all the things, but looking back, I don't remember them saying that is not okay that he did that. That is not okay. And we are going to press charges. We are going to do these things so that you have justice for that because you are worth more than that, you know? And so I think that's what I would have swooped in and said.
Wow. So
So that was kind of a loaded question.
yeah, but you know what? I thank you for being so transparent and vulnerable. It takes a lot, and I don't want to diminish that or, belittle that at all. So thank you for sharing. Can I ask, was it resolved? Did the dude, like, were there charge pressed, or I can't even get the words out. Like
charges pressed. Yeah, I had asked my mom about that later. And I mean, she is now completely on the other side and knows, like, she's like, oh, now I know that I should have done X, Y, Z, and this should have happened. So she's come around too, but she was doing the best she could at that time. It was a neighbor across the street, and so he was in his teen years, and my dad apparently went and had a talk with him and banned him from coming to our house ever again, and had a talk with his dad, and they decided not to press charges. And I don't really, I mean, I think they were trying to be gracious to that kid. But at the same time, it was not stellar for me looking back. So
I can't imagine. Well, once again, your heart is on display, desiring to be an advocate for anyone who would have been in a similar situation. So, once again, thank you for sharing.
Well, you're welcome.
Okay, so let's jump into mama systems. Who, where, what, why, when, like, how did it come to be? Like, give us all the juicy tidbits.
Yes. Okay. Well, we went from having 4 biological children to 5 biological children. And then when we added that 5th, when he was born, 2 weeks later, we started the adoption process with our 3 adopted buddies.
2 weeks later.
Yes. And here's the thing, is that we had our oldest one that's adopted in foster care before, down in Texas. I've got to share this because it's just like, this is just too much Jesus that we need to talk about.
Oh, we love Jesus here. Please, please. Yes.
We had Andrew in our house before when he was first born, and he had gone back to foster mom. Well, no, I was the foster mom. He had gone back to bio mom. So sorry.
Okay.
Confusing. At 8 months, and our hearts were broken. We clearly felt like he was our child. We loved him. He was part of our family. We ended up moving up to Seattle, and bio mom moved from Dallas down to Port Arthur. I mean, she had many other moves in between there, but she ended up moving to Port Arthur, and I'm from Beaumont. And so those are really close to each other, which is very ironic, that they just happened to pick that place. And so we had gone down to visit, and kind of just seeing the chaos that they were in, which just kind of broke our hearts. And so all this to say, they were eventually put back in care, and we got a call. Let me rephrase that. I had called several times. I called several times to talk to the CPS worker, and she never called me back. And I think she might have thought I was psycho. And so the week after, just because, like, who calls to check on CPS kids, right?
Okay, right.
Like, not that I was acting psycho.
No, I understand what you're saying. Persistence. Like that persistent widow in Luke. I'm with you.
Yes. And so it was Palm Sunday, 2 weeks after we had our 5th biological, right? And well, yes, that's right. And I'm sitting in church, and he's like preaching about something, and it was the most random Palm Sunday. I mean, everybody talks about Palm Sunday, right? And but it was just so random. And he was talking about Jesus weeping over the city of Jerusalem. And he said, these are the people that Jesus weeps for. These are the people his heart breaks for. And he mentioned the orphan. And I was like, okay, look, God, this is it. Like, I don't know what to do. She's not calling me back. I feel like I know, like your word says to advocate. Your word says to fight for them. But at the same time, I'm not seeing any fruit here. I don't know what to do, right? Like, I can keep doing this with all my heart, but it feels like my heart's breaking. So I laid out my wool and said, Lord, I'm going to call her one more time. And if she calls me back, then awesome. But if she doesn't call me back, then I'm just going to let it go. Like, we're just going to let it be. Right. So this has been a whole year, me calling her to check on them. And that next day I called and she called me back and we talked, and she said, you know what, they're looking for a new home for them because the foster mama can't handle it. And so I was like, I'll take them. And so we ended up moving back down to Texas, and then we got them. Okay. So then back to Mama Systems. So we just had that one, added the 3 more, like that was like in a 6-month span because, you have to do foster care training, all that. And it felt chaotic. It felt like I had 3 strangers in my house and I didn't know what to do with them. And they were a whole lot. They were really young. We had 5, 4 and under in diapers.
Right.
It was just so
4
much.
and under in diapers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just remember standing up against the wall and being like, I can just make it to bedtime. Like, that's all I got to do. Just keep them
I just got to make it. I just got to make it.
It was like that. And I would just sit in there in the bedtime and be like, okay, we made it. We made it. They're safe. We're okay. Like, we got this. And I would give myself pep talks all throughout the day, but I would read books and I'd listen to podcasts and do all these things to try to figure out, like, how do we make this normal and feel like we're in a flow, because things just felt kind of crazy. And nothing I read or nothing I looked for gave me the answers I was looking for, because we're such a unique family, right?
Right.
We're so big, and yes, we homeschool, but some of them went to public school. So they were getting on and off the bus. We had therapists in and out of our house all day. Like, it was just, we weren't like anybody else. And so I had to kind of sit down and come up with my own process to figure out what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that process is like, hey, what do we want to be doing? And what do we not want to be doing? Like, very simply. And going through each thing in our life and kind of figuring out what's important to us and what gives us life. And then the things that don't give us life, like, we're going to try to automate, delegate, eliminate those altogether. So that way we can really just be doing what we want to be doing and loving our people how we want to be loving them. And so that's kind of how, after a couple of years of getting that all in play and realizing that, hey, we have 10 kids, but our house is kind of peaceful and it's picked up and clean. And I go into other people's houses and I'm like, not that I'm judging them, but it just feels chaotic.
Right. You recognize the signs. That's what that is.
Yeah. It's like messy and like the kids are going crazy. And I'm like, like my whole body just doesn't handle it well. So I was like, we really have something going on here. And then I end up helping other families get systems in play in their home, because every family is so unique, right? Yeah. So I can't just hand anybody a system. We really got to work through that process of what's important to you. How can your kids do this? Tell me about your kid. Like, all of that is so unique and special that's what I find so much joy out of. So that's what I do now.
And that's Mama Systems. I love it. I love, how God will give us something and we already have what we need in the palm of our hand, right? But now you've taken something that was birthed out of necessity, and then I'll say reproduced or formatted it in such a way that it could be a blessing to others. And then to find joy in that, know that you're making a difference, know that you have a purpose, and that be your job. That has to be like the ultimate.
It is great, because all of that was worth it. Like, it gives that value and it gives that worth, that hardness, when we can take that and walk through it and come out on the other side and then say, you know what, I can do something with all that pain, all that hurt, all that chaos. We can make things better out of it. So
that's what he does. That's what he does. Beauty for ashes, joy for pain, right? I love it when I get to see that kind of thing. It's a real faith booster. It's like right into the veins. Like, no, it's not cut. It's not like watered down. It's just like straight. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh. So, okay. So give us a timeline. When did you realize, okay, I've got something here, and then let me try to, I don't want to say package, but I'll say put it together in a way that I can offer to others. Like, when did you realize, okay, I've got something here.
Yeah. So I started Mama Systems in January of 2019. So it was a few months before that I had helped a friend. She was talking about like one child had been diagnosed with something, and so he needed to go see tutors and therapists and all these things. I was like, oh, we got this. Let's do this. And so I kind of mapped out a plan for her and how she was going to delegate things out and make it happen and not be overwhelmed. And after that, I got off the phone and I was like, that was really fun. I mean, I really like telling people what to do. So, especially when they listen and it works out great for them. I feel like it's a great plan, right? And so I started just thinking about it and I brought it up to my friend Courtney, and I said, Courtney, I think it'd be fun to be a coach and help moms do stuff like this, like kind of get their lives in order. And she was like, yes, you would be great at that. And she was so encouraging and so sweet. And so I was like, okay, but before I like start too much on this, I want to try it out with a few other families to make sure that I don't jump into this and be like, okay, yeah, this is too much. I can't do it.
Right.
But I continue to love it. So just started out really small and have been working my way up.
And it's funny how, okay, you said January of 2019. So it was like 3 months pre-COVID, but at the same time, after COVID, and you still find yourself being able to thrive. That's another thing I love about when God is involved in something. I love the fact that you're not ashamed to say that he was involved in it. But he will take something. I mean, I'm not belittling or diminishing the impact that COVID has had on the world. I won't just say this country, but at a time where so many others are losing their livelihood, losing their homes, businesses are being shut down. It's like the opposite. He gave you this thing and you were able to birth it by the grace of God, and it's flourishing. Like, do you ever sit back and be like, you know what, God, you know what you're doing?
All the time. It's more like a very open hands of God, you know what you're doing. Like, use me. Like, I want him to use all the crap that I feel like I've been through and all the hardness that I've been through for his glory. And I don't know what that looks like. I feel like it's never gone as I've had planned ever, of course. And so I just want to continually stay open to how he leads things and how he uses me.
I love it. So, okay, so I was a little confused about the moving from Dallas to Seattle. So when did that part take place? Like, were you like toting around children across country, or like, she's like, yes, I was.
It was 2012. We had just had our fourth biological child. And it was it was after Andrew had gone back to his mom, and my husband and I kind of had to sit down, and he said he really wanted to go up and work for Microsoft up in Seattle. And I really wanted to stay here and I did not want to move. He had worked at Microsoft here in Dallas and wanted to go to the mothership, you know?
The mothership. Okay.
It was about a year and a half they'd been talking to me about this. This was a very long argument. So we called this the compromise of 2012 in our house.
The compromise of 2012.
He said, why don't you have we have one more baby here, like at our hospital with our friends, all this, right? We had this community that I adored so much. And so why don't we have one more baby here and then we can move up to Seattle? And I was like, sold. So we had that fourth biological child in March. And then in July, we moved up to Seattle and we stayed there for 2 years. And then, we had our fifth right before we moved back. And that was a whirlwind. Like we had maybe a 3-week period to get back to, we had come down for a wedding. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine.
That's I'm following in my mind of like the timeline. I'm like jumping in and out. And we'd come down for a wedding and found a place here, talked to the people here about doing training here. Because we tried so much to be able to adopt them up there. We did foster care training. We did private adoption. We hired attorneys. Like we did all of this up there. And it basically came down to the ICPC rules, which are the interstate compact agreement that states have between each other, basically saying we're not going to transport children unless we have your approval and you have our approval, kind of thing.
Okay.
Because of trafficking reasons. Like overall, it sounds like a good thing, right? It was not in our case. I felt
she's like, no.
I did not like that lady. Yeah, it just felt like one roadblock after the other. the whole time we were trying to adopt them. But quickly the Lord would just show up. He'd just show up so many ways. And so we ended up moving back. We had to sell our house and our cars and all that and move back down to Dallas. And we rented a house and started foster care training here. And then while we were doing foster care training, so before we moved back in July to Dallas, and then my husband didn't get a job until November, December down here. So he was flying back to Seattle the whole time while we were doing training. He'd fly to Dallas to come do training and then go back to work. And then we saved up vacation days and stuff. And so when they were placed with us in November, he just took off vacation and paternity leave and all of that so that he could be here. But yeah.
Yes, that's a lot. And little bitties, it was only a few months, right? Between the back and forth. God had to be involved in that one. My goodness. So you said that you would stand on the wall and give yourself pep talks. I just have to make it till the end of the day. I can only imagine the frame of mind that you had to put yourself, I call it survival mode. What does that look like? And I only ask that because I believe that some people walk around in survival mode and they don't even know it. So if you can go back to that place without visiting any post-traumatic stress, what did that look like for you?
No, I do think so many people live in that all the time. Mm-hmm. And what I make up just from working with other mamas and life in general is that looks a lot like, okay, what mess has just been made? Let me go clean that up. Okay, I hear them doing this over there. I need to go do that. I need to go do this. Dishes need to be done. Laundry needs to be done. Da, 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 da. And you're just all over the place living very reactionary. And that's no way to live life. I kind of equate those two things, reactionary living and survival mode, because you're just trying to get through the next thing. And there's no vision of what you want that you're striving for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a lot of moms are houses, which I totally get. I don't like a chaotic house. I don't like it when things are messy.
Right.
So, but they look around and they feel overwhelmed. And so they just start little by little, but they don't have a plan for keeping things up and making things happen. And then have a plan for investing in your children, how you want to invest in them. I said for so long, I was I want to be teaching my kids, just the basics of our faith and catechism questions, we're not Catholic, but because that's a question I get asked a lot. So just addressing that right off the bat.
Okay.
And so we now sit down and go through those, but we have a plan for making that happen, right? And I wanted to do scripture memory with them and teach them how to look up things in the Bible, but just all these things I never, those are things I desperately wanted. And I could say that's the most important thing. If they can get to the end of their time here, that's what I want them to do. But I didn't try to train them or teach them or anything. And so I really had to create space to make that happen and be intentional with that.
Wow. So when you go into these houses or these homes, you said it's a process, and I get that. It's not something you can build overnight, because you need to, I'm imagining you would need to observe, and then you would need to plan, and then you need to sit down, maybe have some difficult conversations with the mama and the daddy, right? Wait, are daddies incorporated into this system since it's called mama systems?
Yeah, well, I work with moms, so I don't normally go, I've only gone into someone's home maybe 2 times.
Okay.
And that's because they're local, but most of the people I work with are all over the country and all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of give them a list. I've kind of learned the questions to ask, and so I have them write down everything that they do during the day. And from that list, I then have them categorize it by what gives them life, what drains them, and what they're neutral about. And so an example of that for me would be, I hate unloading dishes. So that's in the drain me category.
Okay.
I don't mind loading dishes. It's just I don't mind at all. I can just stick them in there. No big deal. And then something that gives me joy is having all the dishes done and looking at a clean kitchen, right? So then kind of piecing those things together and being okay, well, you don't need to do the things that drain you. We have people in your house that are also making the mess that can help with that, right? And so let's delegate that out to your kids. Let's have them come in and do that every morning. And so we just go step by step in all the things and try to figure out a plan for each thing. Like, okay, well, you want to do this with your kids. Where are we going to put that in? Do you think breakfast would be a good time to sit down and do that with them, or lunch, or, so we go through each thing and then create a plan for it.
So it's like you get to take chaos and then package it up nice and neatly and then turning it into something beautiful.
And it's so fun. I love it so much.
That sounds great. So I have this thing, like, I love to-do lists, and the best thing about them is scratching it off, saying it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like the greatest to-do list, like, ever. Just a satisfaction of knowing that something is done.
Yes.
Man. Okay, so fostering and adoption. How did you even, because I'm of the opinion that that in itself is a calling. How did you even get involved with the process? Like, I mean, not to say that a person who is able to have children shouldn't or wouldn't, but like, you were obviously producing. So what is that rude? Okay, not producing.
Well, no.
Okay.
I mean, you should hear some of the things that people say to us. That's not rude at all.
Oh, well, please, if I ever do, like, just say, hey, I don't want to use offensive language, but like, how did you guys get involved in the process?
Yeah, so that was something that before we even got married, we had talked about that we wanted to do. I remember reading in, this always makes me tear up here. I remember reading a magazine article or some sort of article that I'd like cut out of something, a paper, a magazine, whatever. And it was about Rwanda, and they were having all of the just rebellion, and I should study more on the history of that thing that I actually read about, but they were talking about like the warlords going in and crucifying the women upside down and tearing out the babies out of their wombs and what they were doing to children. And I know this is very awful and horrible, but it made me, like, I posted it in my next to my door to remember to pray for them. But I remember reading that over and over again, just thinking, like, if I could get those babies and get them here instead and love on them and create a space for them, like that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to do. And so I knew probably about that age, like 10 or 11, that I wanted to adopt. And so then it was a matter of finding somebody who wanted to adopt with me. And Tony was not on board with adoption at first. Like, we're still talking before we got married.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
He just wanted 2 kids and that's it. And we've kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't bring that up too often with him, but he ended up watching a show, and like a commercial came on, the ones where they show you all the kids and like the horrible conditions in the world, and they're asking for money for whatever thing that they're doing, which is great. Like, all that's great. But he was watching that, and he had seen one of the little girls pick up trash off the ground and put it in her mouth. And he was like, if we could just keep one person from that would be amazing. And so his mind was flipped, and he came back and said, I'm totally willing to adopt. And so we knew that going in that was going to be part of our plan. And then we accidentally kept having babies. And
accidentally?
Well, I know we know how it works. Get asked that a lot. We do know, but we were told with Amelia, our oldest, that I had endometriosis and I was going in for surgery. And so, but clearly I didn't. And here we are.
Not. So, yes.
Yeah. So our first 3 were like, oh, okay, we're having a baby. And I know that's really obnoxious for people who, I know it's really obnoxious for people, I think, who struggle with having children. Mm-hmm. And my sister struggled with having children for a while too. And so there was a lot of shame on my part. Like, it doesn't seem like that should be a shame-filled thing, but I was like embarrassed and felt shame. Hopefully not on the same level as, like, I'm not trying to compare the two, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. I understand.
I also felt shame for the opposite reason.
Yeah. And that's a first, like, because I've never heard that before, but I guess that because I never considered that. Like I've had issues with conceiving. Me and my husband tried for several years. Um, and the shame, the stigma that is associated with that is debilitating. It's crazy. But to hear on the flip side, and I get that, I get it, it makes so much sense. But I guess sometimes when you're so concerned about like your own headspace, you don't take the time to consider. I understand that though. You just struck a little chord within me when you said that.
Yeah. And then it's because I wanted so desperately for my sister to have a baby. And like when I found out we were pregnant with our third, I was like, I just don't even want to tell her. I don't want to, like, I wanted to hide, and people would make comments, and every time I'd be like, I just want to get under a table and not tell anybody. And it felt very shame filled. Anyway, sorry. After our third child, we ended up, my husband said, Laura, we need to go ahead and get on this adoption journey. If we are, my phone's alarm is going off.
It's okay.
Let me
My
go
listeners
grab
know
it.
we at home. It's all right.
I don't know where it is. Hang on.
It's okay.
Okay. He had said, well, Laura, if we're going to get on this adoption thing, we need to go ahead and get on it, because I don't know if I could handle any more children than 4. Like, we got to do our one adoption and be done, right?
Said that at the 4-piece. Okay. All right.
So we went to an adoption class at our church, and they strongly encouraged us to not move forward unless we were both on the same page. And I really want to adopt from Africa. Like, that's where my heart was. I spent a summer there. I love Africans with all of my heart. Like, it takes everything in me to see an African person that's a store and not want to go hug them. And I realized there's serious boundary issues there.
Right. Little.
Yeah. Anyway, he wanted to adopt from China. And so we just waited, and we're waiting to see where this would lead. And one day they had an adoption panel come up of foster care parents, and they were talking. It sounded awful, and nobody wants to do foster care because I feel like it's just constant ripping your heart out, right?
Yeah.
You get attached, and then they get taken away, and so nobody wants to sign up for that. But we both looked at each other and go, oh crap, this is what we're supposed to do. Wow. And so
wow,
which is, I think, having that calling and having just so many times the Lord show up in ways that I couldn't imagine. Like us in Seattle, sitting at a table, and we're talking to our kids about moving back and trying to kind of prep them through this at a restaurant. And a kid comes over to us and says, I was adopted out of foster care. And so I think what you're doing is amazing. Like, it's like, I couldn't help but eavesdrop. I'm like, who? Like, just the Lord. So just different things like that I'd be like, wow, like that's Jesus. And so,
yeah.
I think having all of that so written out for us, very clearly for us, has made this really hard, because Andrew was not hard when we first received him. Like, the first newborn, easy piece of cake. The child that came back to us and his 2 siblings were really hard, and they're still really hard. And so there's so many times that people say, do you regret doing that? And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we're supposed to do this, and that if nothing else, that we'll be able to stand before God one day and say that we were obedient.
Wow.
And that's it. I so desperately want to shed light on just the hardness of adoption and the hardness of special needs kids. And I think the combination of the two is even harder, because there's no, for us, we have not been able to really build attachment because of the intellectual delays, right? So they all have ID, which is intellectual delay, which is kind of the new PC term for mental retardation. And so I think so often when I hear parents talk about special needs, and they'll talk about the hard, but there's always a tagline of, oh, but it's so worth it, or, oh, but they're so great and I love them so much, or something. There's something great tagged onto the end, like, that almost negates the really hard part.
The pain, right?
Yeah. And often with adoption as well, like, you'll hear that and you'll be like, but it's so worth it. And there's so many days I'm like, I don't really know if it's worth it. Like, this feels like so much work. It feels like just a lot of destruction and a lot of chaos that they're bringing. And so Like, it's just hard. There's no tagline for me on it.
Right, right,
And I want others to know that, because if I didn't know better, like if I didn't have the trust that this is hands down what we're supposed to be doing, I would so be one of those mothers who are like, and we're out, another home, right?
peace, right.
So I don't
Wow.
judge those mamas at all, because it is so hard. And you're like, you're giving up your life, and not just your, like, I feel like that's a very cliche thing to say, but it's every day, every minute is not how I would dream it to be because of these little buddies, you know?
Right. Wow.
And so I view this as like we've made a covenant with them and to God that we're going to take care of them and they're our people. And so it's just like marriage in that way of, my husband's not always a gem by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm committed to him and I'm committed to the Lord. And I know that one day I'm going to stand before my Savior and say, like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do, and I made a commitment and I did not break it. So anyway, all that to say, that's just, I feel like we're in a counseling session.
No, and once again, I find myself having to express my appreciation for your transparency and vulnerability, because I'm sure it is difficult. And that's one thing I think is important about having conversations like these where people say they're taboo or whatever. Like, no, these are the conversations that we need to have. Everyone wants to, you know, be a cheerleader for the winner. Everyone wants to applaud. Everybody wants to hear about the good. Oh, they're good and they're do. But what about, there was a process. There was some bad and there's some ugly involved in that. So it's imperative that we talk about those different aspects of any process, of any journey, so that way people know when they, like, is somebody out here that's listening to what you just said and they be like, oh my gosh, I'm not a horrible mother, someone else feels like this, oh my gosh, I'm not by myself, oh my gosh, it's normal to not be like, oh, everything is puppies and unicorns, when it's just not the truth.
That is my heart and desire, so other mamas would hear that they're not alone. And again, I feel like it's because I'll read books again that are about special needs people, and I love the book, feel encouraged by it, whatever. But at the end, it just sounds like their life is still peachy keen, and like that's the picture that's painted. And so then I'm like, well, that's great for you, but I still feel like really,
Right.
this is really hard. And so I love going and being able to encourage mamas that you're not alone, and
Yeah. Wow.
it's just hard. So
Well, I want to encourage you. The word says that obedience is better than sacrifice. So if you're taking solace in the fact that you'll be able to stand before your Lord and Savior and say, I was obedient. And let me tell you something else. I don't know when the last time you read Deuteronomy 28, go and read it, because it tells about what obedience will produce in our lives. It speaks about the blessings of God chasing you down because of your obedience. So may the Lord bless you abundantly, you and your husband, for your obedience, and for every promise in Deuteronomy 28 come to fruition in the name of Jesus for you and your family because of your obedience. You have to know by now that you are impacting the lives of so many, not just through mama systems, but because of your walk. There's always someone watching, whether you know it or not. Because of the way that you stand, because of your integrity, you have to know these things. I don't know if it's something that you've ever like sat up and thought about, like, but probably not, because you seem like a really humble, down to earth chick. But you have to know that. You what?
I said, who has time for that?
Well, with 10 children, I can't imagine. Wow. Okay, so one thing that you spoke of when you were saying that you would want to speak to the mamas of children with special needs, is there, I know there's probably like you said there are resources and there are groups and there are support systems. I know they're probably different for each area, but is there one like a national one or whatever that you could easily reference to for anyone listening or watching, where they can have a start? Like, so it's like you can't say we never told you, because I'm sure there are plenty out there. Like, are you a part of any?
Yeah. So some of the services that I was referring to are actually through the government.
Okay.
And so all three of our buddies, because they were adopted out of foster care, all have Medicaid,
Mm-hmm.
which is wonderful. And I know that a lot of people just for health, like their children's health reasons, qualify for Medicaid as well, which means that you can qualify for Medicaid waiver programs in different areas. It looks totally different, call different things, all those things,
Yeah.
right? But this allows for people to come into our home every week and help me with things. Like one of the big struggles that I have is just the changing. I mean, and by struggles, I mean like it just sends me through the roof. The pee smell in their rooms, they pee everywhere, and so the person comes in and changes their sheets and cleans the room, so I don't have to do that. And so she does a lot more than that. That's not.
Mm-hmm.
She's not dwindled down to that, but it has been so helpful for me to not be, while they're at school, to not be bitterly walking around being like, I have to clean it.
Yeah.
But she's doing that part. I had that time to love on my other kiddos. Like it's been such a blessing. There is a group that I'm totally blanking on. The little boy has, Buddy. I don't know. But it's normally at churches. If anybody has any questions, they can reach out to me and I can actually look up this
Awesome.
information for them for
Awesome.
sure. I would love to help them get started on this process. But churches volunteer to have special needs families drop off their kids, like all of their kids, so that parents can have a break. And that's been huge.
Love.
Yeah. And I know that there's so many support groups in different areas. I have a great support group system with my friends. And so that's been a huge blessing. And the girl that actually works for us is the oldest of 9 children, and she has 2 siblings with special needs. And so she's just always encouraging me.
Oh,
I mean, she's just such an encourager, and it has been such a blessing. Like when I was kind of at my lowest, like right before we started Mama Systems, not at my lowest, but it was just a really hard time. And it felt like, okay, Lord, I'm doing this, but my gosh, I can't do it. Like I don't know what to do. And I feel so overwhelmed. And Mary showed up. And so I continually tell her, I'm like, you are the Lord seeing me and loving me. Like her presence is that for me. Like on a daily basis, but definitely in those first few days, it's like, oh, you hear me and you know me and you know I needed this. And so I know everybody's not going to be blessed with a Mary, and you can't take her away from me, but
she's like, she's mine.
Yeah. So, but I would love to help anybody find resources if that's a need.
I love how he's created like this network of support for you and your family. It's just another reminder of his promises to supply every need according to his riches and glory. And oftentimes, I won't speak for everyone else, I think about finances or monetary, but he said every need according to his riches and glory, right? So that's everything, and he's doing it, and I love to see it. So do you or Mama Systems, does Mama Systems have anything new coming down the pipeline?
A few things.
Okay.
Well, we just released our Mama Planning Pack, and that's like a whole bunch of amazing women that just share little snippets of their expertise. Like, so different women who have businesses in different areas, and they kind of share if you're planning for vacation this year, if you need to do your estate planning, like all of that's in there, and it's so good. So I'm excited about that. We just released that. And then I'm hoping that in April or May, I'm going to be doing a special needs conference or summit or something, workshop. I'm not sure what we're calling it, but it will be just based for mamas who have kids with special needs, and just talking about services and estate planning there as well, and getting things in order for them when they grow up, and just coping mechanisms and all the things that I feel like those mamas need. I'm also, this is apart from Mama Systems, but I'm also kind of working on writing a book. Just for the same reasons of like, I want moms to be able to read that and know they're not alone, you know?
Yes, do it, Miss Laura. Yes, I love it. You know what? When you do the conference, however that looks, I want you to reach out to me because I would like to help any way I can. And We Are Not So Different would like to get involved in any way, shape, or form. Same thing with that book. You're going to need some people to help you promote it. We Are Not So Different is here for you, Mama Systems and Miss Laura Hernandez. So reach out. Let's
I
not
love it.
let's not be strangers. I'm really excited for everything that you got. Like, it's a lot. Like, I can imagine you having to run at like on all cylinders at all times because of everything that you have going on. But look, you look fresh as a daisy. You're chipper and bubbly and full of encouragement, man. It's like, I love to see it. I love what you're doing. So
Thank you.
before we get, you're welcome, love. Before we get out of here, I want you to share with my listeners where they can find you. So you want to give us social media handles, you want to give us websites, you want to give us phone numbers, whatever you want. And then I'll also I'll share your information when I post this to YouTube and all that good stuff so people know where to find you.
Perfect. Yeah, Mama Systems is super easy. So mamasystems.net and at Mama Systems on Instagram and Facebook, Mama Systems. So it should not be difficult.
Mama Systems, you hear it and then you see it in the background. You see her board, her poster, her chalkboard. Yes, girl, work it. Okay, well, thank you so much for spending your time with me this morning. As we can all tell that you are a super busy lady, so I really appreciate it when people can carve out some time to chit chat with We Are Not So Different. You are appreciated.
I've had so much fun this morning. I'm so grateful.
I'm so glad. All right, well, ladies and gents, until next time, y'all be good to one another. Love ya. Peace.
We are not so different.